Welcome back. Now, the South African National Editors Forum's fight against the EFF will continue in the Equality Court this morning. Sanef and some journalists have taken the red berets to court for intimidating, harassing and threatening journalists. Now, reporter Yanke Tolme is outside the Equality Court ahead of day 2 of the case. This morning, Yanke will see the EFF continuing its arguments, which started yesterday. Can you just remind us of their nub of argument so far?
Yes, Dan. Yesterday, Sanef started and wrapped up their arguments shortly after lunch, after which the EFF started, but they will be continuing today. But what we've heard so far from Sanef's side, they're basically saying that if anyone is doing something appalling in your name, referring to these supporters tweeting and intimidating some of the journalists in the name of the EFF should have taken action, especially because Sanef told the court that Malema, or the president of the EFF, Julius Malema, was speaking outside of the Zondo Commission, and they're saying what he said basically is tantamount to hate speech, saying that I think specifically his words were that if the enemy rears its head, you shouldn't just kick it, you should basically cut it off. And they're saying that was basically a call to violence, and that's why we've seen, according to Sanef, a lot of the EFF members or people claiming to be EFF supporters tweeting and threatening some of the journalists, specifically those 5, including Pauli van Wyk and Adrian Masson, who's a part of this court action. And they're saying if anyone had a problem with a particular journalist, because they named these journalists specifically, accusing them of bias, they had the appropriate channels through which they could have raised these concerns. They could have come to court on the basis of defamation, or they could have approached the press ombudsman. But the EFF, starting yesterday, dismissing all these allegations, basically saying that Sanef has now entered the political arena because they are basically tying the EFF's hands. They're saying that the EFF is basically just busy with robust political discussions, and nothing that they said was a call to violence, and they can't also take any responsibility for the actions of these unidentified individuals as they claim to be.
So today we'll hear the continuation of EFF's arguments, and who else is an interested party in this case? Is it only Sanef and that group of journalists, or are there other interested parties who are participating in this case?
We just heard a quick submission from Media Monitoring Africa, who joined as a friend of the court yesterday. But furthermore, today we'll just hear from the EFF closing their arguments, and then we are expecting to hear closing replies. I have to mention that this matter was initially set down for 3 days, but some people are saying that they do expect the case to wrap up today. But there's still quite a number of technicalities that they're still arguing apart from the merits of the case, and that is whether this case should actually be even heard in the Equality Court. And they're saying that Sanef, the management of Sanef, could not make that decision to bring this case to the court, and then also asking whether journalists and the occupation of journalism is covered under the Equality Act. So the EFF today expected to continue that argument that this matter should not even be heard in this case, but then further saying that there is nothing that can be justified as hate speech from the remarks from Julius Malema, but also saying they can't take any responsibility for those tweets that followed. And then also thirdly, them saying that there is also responsibility on behalf of the journalists involved in this court action, because the EFF is claiming that these journalists have taken a biased position in their reporting, basically entering, as I've mentioned, that political arena. So we are expecting to wrap up today after those closing arguments have finished, and then we do expect a judgment to be reserved.
Okay. you very much. Yankee Tolme in Pretoria, that Equality Court case involving the EFF and Sanef.